With the 144th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Shedeur Sanders.
What's up, everybody? Welcome here to Level Up Clips. As you can see by the first clip, we're going to talk about Shedeur Sanders getting drafted in the 5th round, where he was supposed to get drafted number 2 overall behind Cam Ward. Maybe not number 2 overall, but quarterback 2 overall behind Cam Ward. Why did he drop so far? We'll talk about it. And is it an NFL scandal? Did the owners just say, and the GMs say, and the scouts say, hey, we're not going to draft this guy because of Yaks, his dad? Is he really not that good on the field, or what? Well, we're going to head and dive into it. So starting off, we're going to go off and watch this 4-minute video, and we'll pause it periodically through it and see what they say, and I will give my feedback on it, and we'll just go with it.
Mike, it was not a shock within the NFL and team buildings when Shedeur Sanders did not go in the first round. I would fairly tell you it is a surprise that he is still on the board at the start of day 3. Philosophically, some teams feel like if you are drafting at the quarterback position specifically, if you think you got a starter, you take him in round 1. If you're drafting somebody to be your backup, you don't want to do that until day 3. I spoke last night.
So you don't want to draft your starter. You want to draft your starter on day 1 and then draft your backup on day 3 or later on. So are they saying that Dillon Gabriel is going to be the starter, possibly, to fight for it, and not Shedeur Sanders, and he's going to be more of a backup and learn? Like, what? In my opinion, I think Shedeur Sanders might possibly be better than Dillon Gabriel. I mean, based off stats alone and everything like that. Yeah, he didn't have as good of a season as Dillon Gabriel did, like, I guess, record-wise. Dillon Gabriel, I think won one big game that I could really recall, and I was against Ohio State in the last seconds, and that was just because Ohio State messed up last few seconds of the game.
With one general manager who is considering taking Shedeur Sanders today. He pointed back all the way to March 2024, and something that Shedeur's father, Deion Sanders, said on a podcast talking about both Shedeur and Travis Hunter, saying that if they are drafted by a team that they don't want to go to, he's going to step in and pull an Eli, meaning force those players to not actually go to that team and try to get them traded. Throughout the pre-draft process, Shedeur Sanders very much proceeded as if he was dictating to clubs where he was going to go rather than how the draft works, which is the other way around. And there were a bunch of
So Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders get drafted by a team that Deion Sanders doesn't think that they should go to. That he's going to step in and try to get traded. Could that be a reason why owners and GMs and wanted to stay away from him because they're like they don't want to deal with this drama? Like, if we're going to draft you, we're going to have you on the team. We're not going to trade you away unless they're going to pick him and then trade him for possibly more round picks next year or something else, maybe a veteran. I don't know.
Opportunities missed at the various checkpoints through that pre-draft process. Go all the way back to All-Star season. Instead of going to the Senior Bowl, he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl in his backyard in Dallas. Despite an NFL memo saying if you go to these All-Star games, you have to practice, Shedeur chose not to. At the Combine, it is now well documented some of his formal interviews did not go well. One assistant coach told me in all his years it was the worst formal interview he'd ever been through. People said that Shedeur was trying to dictate how he wanted things to go and made them feel small. Even at the Pro Day, the entire Big 12 had an event in Dallas. Shedeur was there, but did not work out. He had a showcase instead in Colorado. All of which is to say, for a player who had a variety of questions both about the talent level, how he would fit into an NFL system, how he would adjust from his play style.
So he went to the Shrine games or the games he had to practice at them, but he didn't practice. That could be a red flag? Or what he just said about the interviews and the Combine. Former interviews did not go well. The worst interviews they sat in on. Interviews are that important? I mean, I guess you could show your professionalism and possibly knowledge or your character and how you act in a formal setting. I mean, people could be based off that instead of, just looking at your stat record and be like, all right, cool, we want this guy because he has a good judge of character and everything like that. Kind of like an interview for a job
in college, but also about the potential culture shock of, for the first time, playing for someone who is not his father. There were opportunities that Shedeur Sanders could have taken there. He seemed to feel as if he was in an elite category where he could choose the few teams he wanted to go to. Now some of those very same teams that might be considering taking Shedeur today didn't get those opportunities to answer their questions.
What teams want on these visits, and we can debate,
what he was trying to explain was Shedeur is trying to run the show. This is how I'm going to do it, and this is how it's going to happen, instead of the other way around where the NFL's like, so this is how this is going to happen and everything. He was trying to, I guess, he was pretty much trying to run the show, and right now the NFL is kind of saying, yeah, no, that's not how this is going to happen. So we're going to show you how this is actually going to go.
Whether they should, but what they want is to hear a player that is coachable, that is willing to accept information, that is willing to adapt when they're being asked to adapt. He didn't communicate that on a lot of these visits. Again, we could debate this, but I'm just telling you that that's what these teams got, and that's what Tom is communicating here as well. Okay, so landing spots today potentially for Shedeur Sanders, without outing that GM that told you he's thinking about taking him.
Well, there's a couple of the obvious teams, Mike, that did have Shedeur Sanders in on visits. The Las Vegas Raiders are one. They signed Geno Smith traded for Geno Smith from Seattle in the offseason, signed him to a new contract. Geno is their starter, but Tom Brady, who is a minority owner for the Raiders, heavily involved in football operations, has been a mentor to Shedeur Sanders. And once you get into fourth-round type of value, that could be something that interests the Raiders, if for no other reason than to bring in Shedeur, allow him to develop a player that one scout told me is projecting like a Geno Smith with maybe just a little bit less arm. The Steelers are another team that do not yet.
Do you guys think that's a good comparison, that Shedeur Sanders is like a Geno Smith but with less arm? So maybe development, getting his arm stronger, more accurate, more vision, or better vision would be better for him than to get picked number one or first round pick to go in to be the starter for these teams. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yet have their quarterback answer. That visit, from everything I've understood, went well between Shedeur Sanders and, in particular, Mike Tomlin, a guy who Shedeur told us on the Insiders reminds him a lot of his dad in terms of their values and their approach to football. You also now, again, because you're in day 3, have to start thinking about some teams that do not have obvious quarterback needs. Again, because GMs are looking at the board, and there may be somewhere Shedeur Sanders is the outlier right now. Think about a team like, just throwing one out, the Philadelphia Eagles. They want to be a quarterback factory. Howie Roseman likes to draft one every year, Mike. They're comfortable. They're coming off a Super Bowl win. They've got Jalen Hurts. Nobody thinks Shedeur's coming in and challenging for the job. Maybe a team like that could come out of the darkness and stop Shedeur Sanders from sliding any further down.
That would have been wild if the Philadelphia Eagles would have picked Shedeur Sanders. Don't you guys think? Like, that would be just a wild pick. You have Jalen Hurts. I don't know who his backup is, but maybe learning under Jalen Hurts, maybe that system might work for him. I don't know. Maybe his legs aren't strong enough for the tush push. If Jalen gets hurt, who's going to do that one? They're going to throw Saquon Barkley in there under the center to do the tush push? That'd be wild. I got another thing to show right here. This is from Anita Marks. What she wrote down was, speaking to NFL scouts, why has Shedeur Sanders plummeted? What they said was he's unteachable tendencies, retreats backward under pressure, not mobile, holds ball with one hand. That could be an issue, but also we could see a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL doing that. Patrick Mahomes is one of them. Josh Allen's one of them. I think Jalen Hurts every now and then. I mean, they all kind of do it. All the kind of hybrid mobile quarterbacks kind of start running with one hand. Lamar Jackson. Pocket quarterback, lack of playmaker ability. 150 of his passes were screens this season. Why his completions were so high and he broke the record. Lack of humility. Ceiling is a Baker Mayfield. So he will not be better than a Baker Mayfield is pretty much what that is saying. Give me your thoughts on what you guys just read and what I just read out to you guys on this one. Lastly, what I want to get into for this video is how I think the NFL draft for the quarterbacks, the 10 quarterbacks should have been drafted. This is going to be obviously just my opinion. I want you to let me know down in the comments what you guys think, how the draft should have went, and who should have drafted, who should have got drafted where in front of who, 1 through 10. I'd like to know what your guys' thoughts on it. So obviously my first pick, it was obvious right here, Cam Ward. I mean, broke many records. He had over 4,300 passing yards, 332 per game. Yeah, his completion percentage was 69. He threw the ball down the field. He was 305 for 454, 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, long of 77. Right there. Now, this might throw people off. It is what it is. Where is he at? Right here. Old Jackson Dart. I think he should have went second. Second in the draft. My opinion. He played in the SEC, major conference. Shedeur Sanders played in the Big 12. They're kind of weak this year. No big deal because Texas left, Oklahoma left. I mean, they still had Kansas State in there. Arizona State played well. other teams like that. They hit me. We went 276 for 378, 79%, 4,200 yards, almost to 4,300. He had 329 per game, 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 75 long. I know he had a heartbreaking loss. I think it was against LSU. I did watch that game. The LSU quarterback threw a dart down the field between two defenders for the game-winning touchdown or going to overtime, and they just lost a heartbreaker on that one. I mean, he went 10-3, won a bowl game. Cam Ward went 10-2. He left the game against Iowa State in the Pop-Tart Bowl at halftime. Maybe if he played, he would have won. But, I mean, he did have some key losses in there against Syracuse and Georgia Tech, where they couldn't come back like they did against Cal. I also personally think that the Hurricanes schedule, they probably should have went around 500 instead of going 10-2. This is where I think Shedeur Sanders should have went. It was right there, right behind Jackson Dart. To every team that got him. Based off, 4,100 yards, 353 for 477, 74%. But they said 150 that was screen passes. No big deal. 37 touchdowns, 10 receptions, long of 69, 318 per game. Out of all these quarterbacks, though, I think he got sacked the most. He had 42 sacks. Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. Cam Ward had 22. Jackson Dart had 28. Is that he's more mobile? Or that means they are more mobile, or the line wasn't that good? All right, let's go on. Where it is, there it is. So this part might be a little tougher. We could do, I think a toss-up could be a Will Howard or even a Kyle McCord at fourth. These two could be switched up. I think these two were decent quarterbacks that kind of, Will Howard didn't hide away from the spotlight. He won the national championship. But Kyle McCord, he was the transfer out of Ohio State this year, went to Syracuse. They had a really good season. So, he even had a good season at Ohio State before he transferred out and Will Howard took over. But I think these two could have went 4 or 5. Vice versa, wouldn't really matter. Then based off of this, 6 and 7 could have been either these two, Dylan Gabriel, Jalen Milroe. I think they had similar seasons for Oregon and Alabama. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel, they went 13-1, had a college football playoff appearance, but lost in the second round to Ohio State. Ohio State got revenge on him. Dylan Gabriel just couldn't bust it out, but I think he should have went behind Kyle McCord and Will Howard. And then leading off, I think it should have been Tyler Sowell, Quentin Ewers, and then Riley Leonard to round off the 10 quarterbacks. So we got Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Kyle McCord, Will Howard could have swapped. Dylan Gabriel, Jalen Milroe, they could have swapped. And then these bottom 3 also could have swapped anywhere. But I think Quinn Ewers at Dolphins will probably give him the best chance in the NFL, especially with Tua Tagovailoa injury prone and concussions. But I think how McDaniels is down there can teach him up pretty well. Well, give me your thoughts on that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.